Black people and white people should know this. The slavery in this country was with whites too. They were seen as chattel as well, and often with the same conditions. The people that have been racist have been so many of our leaders, unfortunately. I don't know why. I really don't. I don't know if it's because, you know, the exception would be Donald Trump, but, you know, a lot of those presidents and the people in office, they go back to royalty and not always in a good line. So I don't know if that has something to do with it, but I say this because, well, and I hate saying this because JFK is past. So, you know, who knows what his motives were. But I've said before that in 1960, they paid $100,000 to bring Kenya students, like 800 Kenya students here to go to like the top universities. He flew them in. The State Department didn't want to do it. So it's really no different than what Joe Biden's been doing. Except they rave about it in the Kennedy Library. And Kennedy was a senator then. And I believe he was running maybe against Nixon. And Nixon found out about it. And the State Department said, well, we said no to it. Because the leader of Kenya had went initially to the State Department. And they said no. And then they went to Kennedy. And so Kennedy paid for it, got the flight. He brought the first 2 flights, and then the State Department said, fine, since Kennedy's doing it, we'll have to do it. And they kept doing it from there on out. But the second flight that the Joe Kennedy Foundation's flight that brought in the second batch of Kenya students, Barack Obama's dad was on. And the reason I'm bringing this up is because they make that seem like, oh, they're not racist, but they are. Because there was plenty of black people in America that could have had those seats. And they just gave them to foreigners. That's why when I came across that black gentleman's video not too long ago, actually a couple black men, who said, you know, the only people we got is the white Americans. And I had followed that up by saying all that the white Americans have is the black Americans. Because it's the Americans they hate. And again, I don't know if it goes back to like some sort of lineage, bloodline, you know, back, who knows? It just doesn't make sense, you know? I mean, if Kennedy, and I'm not trying to say he was racist, but, you know, I mean, it does look bad that you would pay so much money to bring foreign students in. I mean, this was totally what we're seeing go on at the border, or how Joe Biden and Kamala have been flying some of these people in. It's because they hate Americans. They don't care what skin color you have. They hate Americans. So I don't think these people like American Nurses Association, the people heading up healthcare, I don't think that they can see it because they don't want to see it. And yet what they always do when they say they're addressing racism is then it's like, we're going to support the indigenous people. It's like people, you know, that aren't really from here. They don't want to support just straight up Americans. They have to find a way to demoralize, discriminate. And it's sad to say that that's what healthcare does, but they've been doing it for a long time. They just get to fly under the radar because they use this, well, we have to think about this group. Well, the moment you do that, then you're disregarding another, because you're then giving special treatment to this group. So, and they get away with it, I think, because it's like, well, it's for healthcare reasons. We have to think. And if you notice, nursing is all about, you better be appropriate with culture, which of course nurses are. We're respectful of that. But it's the people that have always been running nursing, and American Nurses Association sets the standard of care. So they've been that's the reason why it's like, of course they can't change their ways. They don't even know how to. They can't even recognize how they push racism. And yet they don't want to be about it all being equal, even though they say they do. Their deeds show that they're about segregating. We have to make it about the native indigenous people now. They come out in 2020 and say, yes, we were racist in our past and we apologize. And I think that's why there was a black nurse that came out against them and was like, yeah, what is this? Like, some people recognize it. So what I'm trying to say is that it's not about your skin color. It's because you're an American. It is. And that's the reason they want to make, the white people, even though we were enslaved too, in the beginning, white indentured servants between 1619 and 1776, thousands of white Europeans, mostly from England, Ireland, and Scotland, were brought to America as indentured servants. These servants were bound to work for a set period, typically 4 to 7 years, in exchange for transportation and food. Some white indentured servants were treated poorly and were essentially enslaved. In fact, the distinction between indentured servitude and chattel slavery was often blurred. So it seems to me, when you really look at the history, it was Americans they hated. It was, the people that came here wanting freedom or whatever. But and that seems to have carried on. And so I think that's why they like to try to keep a division going between black and white, because it's the very people that like to keep the division going that are racist against both black and white. And often they're the wealthiest and the most powerful, not including Trump, obviously. I think Trump has been the best front. I mean, if you look in his history, the awards he's gotten for the things he's done for the black community, and I mean, big awards. Back before they all wanted to start hating him, I mean, those powerful people that were once giving him awards. But anyway, I think that's what they hated. So in order to deflect off of themselves, they always had to keep this black-white thing going, because then it made you think they cared about you as a black person. And look at even all the people in Chicago, they realized the Democrats just been screwing them over. Yeah, supposedly, because they don't. They hate Americans. It goes back to that hate for America. And so that's why even when they come out and say they're going to reckon their racist ways, they can't. They end up just doing reverse racism, because the fact is that I think it's in their DNA. And that's the reason why, healthcare over time has gotten worse and worse. Like, they're taking it back into the segregation place. And even in education they are. And so when you see healthcare actually saying, we're going to cater more towards Gen Z, we're going to cater more towards the native indigenous people, it's like, so you're doing, you show that you cannot be, you're just biased no matter what it is. And I think it's because they don't have the ability in them, even if they were born in America. They were just, it's in their DNA. I don't know what to say. They just hate America. And they're the socialists. They're your radical socialists, your Bernadine Dorns, your Bill Ayers. Those two love to use the Black Panthers and care about black people. Oh, please. No, what they hate is Americans. And so with JFK doing that, it's just all I could think reading that, especially, because it was a couple of years ago. And when I read it, and I thought, that's what's going on in our country right now, and they're flying them in. Yeah, and then sending them to these universities. Think about all the black young people that could have been sent to Harvard or all these Ivy Leagues. Instead, they gave all those spots to Kenya students. And that was a program that went on for at least a decade that we were paying for. I mean, the first 2 flights the Kennedy Foundation paid for. But why didn't he use that money to help the black people in America? Because I don't think any of these people have ever cared whether you're white or black. What they all hate or seem to have a resentment at is Americans. Something to think about.